Hi, welcome to Tamika's Story Time. Um, and this title, this particular story is about how nice guys finish last. So they say, nice guys finish last. When I was 17, I had, I was 4 months pregnant, and my mother and my sister and I were in an apartment, and my mother had company, and it was a man, it was a gentleman, and they were in the kitchen and they were sitting at the table talking. And my sister, for some odd reason, my sister had she was dating this guy who was a big time street guy. He was a big time street guy, and he had a lot of people feared him for good reasons, because he was a very violent guy. Um, and my sister was madly over the top for this guy, and he had a very overwhelming presence and influence over her. And my sister, she liked to dress scantily, throughout the street. She would wear real short dresses, real extremely short shorts, booty shorts, if you will, tank tops, and she had her own style. But everybody knew that that's the way Nikki dressed. Okay, I'm gonna say Nikki because, again, I don't want. This is for purposes of just conveying this particular story. And everyone knew this is how she dressed. But this particular day, she came out with her negligible nighttime wear, a nightgown, which was very short, very sequence. It was see through. It was just very inappropriate for her to come out. And then she was dancing, and her boyfriend, who is the street guy, came through the door, and he seen her, and he said, "Yo, go put some effing clothes on." And she ran in the room and closed the door. And I'm sitting on the couch, and my mother's sitting at the kitchen table with her friend. And her friend interjected and said, "Hey, be respectful. Her mother is sitting here," for the way that he was talking. So him being who he is, Fred, I'm just going to say Fred, being who he is, he turned and looked at the man and said, "You don't tell me what the F to do. Um, in fact, you can get the F out." This is what he was telling. He said to me, to my sister's boyfriend, "I don't have to do anything. This is Mildred's home," which is my mother. And if she say I can leave, I have to leave, then I'll leave. But I won't listen to you. So him being a mature older man was like, "How dare you? Did you young bull coming in here and you being so vulgar with your mouth and disrespectful to her mother sitting here, and with no regards to her mother's presence." So at the time that Fred came through the door, he came through the door with another friend of his. So he told my mom's friend, "Hey, I'm going to leave and I'm going to drop my man off." That's what he said, his friend, but he called him my man off. "And when I get back, you better be gone." So with that threat, he exited the apartment. And so, everybody, went back to what they were doing. My mom and him resumed their conversation. They went into the living room, and I was sitting on the love seat, which was closer to the entrance of the apartment, and my mother and her friend were sitting on the couch, which was against the wall, um, to the left side of where I was sitting. And they were talking and they were, engaged in their conversation. And we, basically just went on. My sister remained in the room. She didn't come out. So it was about an hour that went past and he returned back to the apartment, Fred. And he said to the guy, the man that was sitting there, "Yo, you still here?" And the man said, "Yeah, I'm still here." And he said, "I told you, I am here for Mildred, not you or anyone else." So he said, "Didn't I tell you that you have to be gone when I get back?" And at the same time that he's letting this man speaking to this man, he's standing, he approached him and he's standing in front of him. And he was a fairly big, stocky guy. Fred was he was tall and very stocky. And the man that he's standing in front of is a medium height, every bit of 5'6", maybe. The small, thin framed man. He stood in front of him and he punched this man in his head so hard, this man's head split wide open from this punch, that it was as if it was the equivalent of him having a bat and bashing this man upside his head. The blood squirted out of his head, and I jumped up from the couch and I ran out of the apartment and ran into a friend of his apartment, which was across the hall. And I'm banging on his door, and the guy was asleep. And he woke up and he was half asleep when he opened the door, and I bust through his door and I said, "Fred is in there fighting." And he said, "Oh God, oh no." So he knew, he knew that it was total chaos, because all you can hear is the screaming and the shuffling and the tussling of the both of them. And my mom is screaming and my sister is screaming, "Stop, stop, stop." And I'm scared. I am petrified. I'm shaking. I'm scared to even go back into the apartment because I don't want to see what damage has been done, the extent of damage. So at this time, the guy was in his shorts. He was in his underwear and t-shirt. He ran out the door and he ran into the apartment. He's like, "Oh my God." So I'm really frightened at this time. Like, oh God, what did he do? Did he kill this man? So when he comes back, he said, he's gone. The guy is gone. He said, "But what happened? What happened?" I said, "He just started hitting the man because he wanted them to leave, and he wouldn't leave." And he was like, "Oh man." So by this time, Fred had went out the door after this man. Even though he ran, he posed no threat to him. And when I went, so I say all that, I left the apartment and I went back in. And when I went back in, the blood was splattered all over the wall, all over the couch. I felt extremely bad for this man. He did nothing wrong but try to vindicate my mother presence, vindicate my mother's honor, and the honor of just being a man and not appreciating that another man is coming in and just being totally vulgar towards her daughter in the way that he was talking to her and speaking to her and in front of her mother. And so, my mom shook up. I'm shook up. Now I am bleeding. I start bleeding. So now they call the ambulance. And the ambulance is being called. And I'm sitting on the couch crying because I I witnessed the trauma. The trauma was so dramatic for me that I'm bleeding now, and I know that that's not a good sign. So my mother is trying to tend to me because I'm hysterical, I'm crying, and I'm angry at the same time, because now I see blood, and I know it's not good. So my mother gets in the ambulance with me, and they put me on the stretcher, and they're trying to figure out what happened, what caused, what was the. So the ambulance, they want to know what happened before, this, occurred. The bleeding started. So I'm so upset. I'm crying. I can't speak. And so my mother's like, it was just something dramatic happened in the home, and it upset her. And she's, going. So the ambulance driver was like, it was a black male. I'll never forget. He said, oh, how far are you? I said, I'm 4 months. And he said, congratulations. And I cried, because I'm like, I don't even know what this congratulations for, but this is not good. I knew in my heart that I was losing the baby, a little boy. And I really wanted this little boy. I wanted this little boy with all my being. I tried to hold on. I couldn't hold this baby inside of my womb. If I had it in the palm of my hands, I was clenching every ounce of my body to hold this baby. But once I got there, they said, you're losing the baby, and they basically said that it has to run its course, and that I may stop bleeding, and they sent me home. Well, that night I got back into the apartment. I was in an apartment for a whole 2 hours, and I had to go back into the emergency room, and I had a miscarriage. And they said it was a little boy, and and I was angry, and I was screaming, and they didn't know why I was screaming. I was screaming, I was kicking, I was like out of my mind. It was like I had a mental breakdown at that hospital, on that emergency room bed, that I freaked the doctors out. I mean, like, they started the DNC and they couldn't even finish it because I was screaming, I was kicking, and they thought that they were hurting me, but they weren't hurting me. I was hurting inside because I was angry. Well, that moment of reaction that I was doing. So while I was kicking and fighting, angry, full of rage, I was unable. They didn't do the DNC, clean me out too well, which ended up later throughout the years causing me an infertility problem. I went years trying to replace the baby that I lost, to no success. I ended up going to fertility doctors, which they discovered that I had scarred tissue form in my tubes because of the neglect of the procedure that was done. So with that, I had to have the scar tissue removed, which was no guaranteed that I would get pregnant. But they removed the scar tissue anyway, and they said that there's a possibility that it could reform in my tubes. So this is 10 years later. The guy who my sister's ex-boyfriend ended up going to jail, and he did a couple years in jail. While he was in jail, rumors had it that he was messing with some of the prisoners that was there. And when I say messing with some of the prisoners, he was using his intimidation tactics with a good a brother of mine who has a YouTube channel, Dante, says military mind games, or he was playing military mind games in the prison. and using his, flexing his strong arming some of the prisoners, and for not just commissary, what they would say, but sexual things. So my sister was not messing with him once he was released from prison. Needless to say, when he was released from prison, one of the people that he had taken advantage of had gotten out of prison too. And they spotted him out on the streets, and they ambushed him. They shot him up. He didn't die, but he became paralyzed. So today he sits in a wheelchair. And I titled this, Good Guys Finish Last. That man who was assaulted by my sister's boyfriend at the time, he went on to do great things. He put his daughter through college. He taught his daughter, the men, to the example of being a man and being a gentleman. He was fine. He didn't have any head injury outside of the scar that was on his, visible on his forehead from the assault. But in the end, he won, because he ended up seeing his child graduate and become a doctor. Okay? And my sister boyfriend ended up in a wheelchair. So you tell me, good guys finish last? I would say no, that's not always so. It may appear to be that way, but only life will show you something different. So be careful and be conscientious of that. Don't be so quick to turn away that gentleman and pick up that bad boy. But throughout the years, I had to learn the hard way, because that's exactly what I did. I turned away the good guy for the bad. And I have a story to give you. So come back, stay in with your girl, and I'll take you on this journey with me. I say be blessed, God bless, and be a blessing to someone. I pray that this was a blessing for you.